You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So John McAfee, original founder of McAfee antivirus software, was found dead in a Spanish prison after his extradition to the U.S. was approved. This happened yesterday. Why are we talking about John McAfee on a real estate podcast of all things? And his death. He hung himself, apparently, allegedly, a la Jeffrey Epstein style, right? We're talking about John McAfee because he's one of those guys that he got things going. If you've been in business for a long, long time, you had McAfee software on your computer. You just did. It was like one of those unavoidable things. In doing my research for this podcast, it was funny that somebody would ask him, well, do you have McAfee software on yours? This was after he'd sold the business. He goes, no, it's bloatware. He said, and the other reason we're covering this is because I like the guy. I think he is certifiably crazy as a fox. He had some poor life choices. He was on the run. He was on the lam from multiple countries wanting to question him for certain persons being dead, namely his neighbors, bullet hole to the head. This guy has a crazy story, had a crazy story. And he always said, if I die in jail or prison from hanging, I didn't kill myself. He said this many times. He did it when he was on the run after leaving Belize. He set up a blog. He said, he ran for president of the United States. And this is just one of those guys you follow because his story is just so incredible that you don't know what to believe. That's what we're checking out today. And he had he had impact on business because McAfee software, you got to have it. You got to download it. All right. You no longer have the free version. You need to pay for it because we all believe that we're all at the center of this cyber warfare and we're going to get hacked if we didn't have it on there. Was that true? I don't know. But I bought it. I bought McAfee software. I had it on my computer for a long time. He would do a scan. You had two bad things that were possibly bad for your computer. We're going to delete them for you. Okay, hit enter. And you feel good about your life. You move on, right? McAfee's about ready to do a scan throughout your entire system. It's going to take 18 hours. All right, I'll let that run at the end of work today. I'll let it go into the next day or let it go over the weekend, whatever. McAfee software is just one of those things. That's why we're covering it. And plus, I follow the guy. I followed the guy's, personal life because it was an entertaining train wreck to have an executive worth probably $100 million at one point in time go to less than that and on the run, living with marrying a prostitute from Miami. I mean, just the whole thing goes on. He claimed that he had like 47 children. Most of the stuff you just can't believe. It probably wasn't true. He pitched crypto, wanted by the U.S. for tax evasion, wanted by the U.S. for money laundering. The list just goes on. John McAfee, found dead yesterday. That's what we're talking about. If you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies and I read the news. Today we're reading about John McAfee. I was actually really sad to see that he had passed away. And I think there's going to be all kinds of conspiracy theories of who killed him. Because he basically called it, but he called a lot of stuff. Let's be honest. He called a lot of stuff and you're like, that's beyond reasonable, John. I can't really run with that theory of yours, but you're a smarter dude than I am, allegedly. So I don't know. He was entertaining, if nothing else. I think we can all agree he was entertaining, did a ton of drugs, had a ton of guns. He's just one of those guys. John McAfee, the controversial antivirus software magnate who'd had multiple recent run-ins with the U.S. law, has died at 75. McAfee was awaiting extradition in a Spanish prison after being charged with tax evasion in the United States last year. McAfee was found dead in his prison cell near Barcelona on Wednesday around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, Eastern Time. And a medical examiner went to the scene. A spokeswoman for the Superior Court of Catalonia told CNN, she said the cause of death is under investigation. That's what they're always going to go with until they figure it out. A statement from the Catalonia Regional Government Justice Department, which manages prisons there, said the prison medical personnel and guards attempted to perform life-saving procedures after finding McAfee, but were unsuccessful. The statement said everything indicates that McAfee could have died by suicide. Okay, usually when somebody's suicidal, there are some signs. McAfee didn't really seem like the kind of guy that would take himself out. He seemed like the kind of guy who was a fighter because he had fought so many times before through some crazy stuff. We're going to touch on just a few of those stories. His death came after a ruling from a 3-judge panel at Spain's National Court in Madrid this week that McAfee could have been extradited to the United States to face charges there. He was always on the run from somebody, claiming there was political prosecution, being prosecuted from this. If the cops get me, I'm done. I'm dead. They're going to kill me. He was always saying that stuff. Twitter, he had Twitter going. He's just firing up tweets. So that decision, after the ruling of the 3-judge panel in Spain, that decision still could have been appealed to a larger panel of judges at the same court, according to court documents. So it hasn't even really been solidified, and he took himself out. It just sounds suspicious to me. I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself? I don't think so. Let's be honest. No. He knew too much. Somebody took him out. John McAfee, he pissed off a lot of people. He did. McAfee had a cellmate at the prison, but that person was not in the cell around the time that McAfee was found dead, a prison official who asked not to be named told CNN. And the cameras that were on Epstein, they had some stuff going on faulty. That went down. The official added that the other person was out doing other normal activities at the prison. Asked if authorities had imposed special monitoring measures on McAfee in his cell, the official said, "I'm not aware of that," because there weren't any. And then he just, maybe he did just take himself out. I wasn't there. You weren't there. We don't really know. But it seems weird that he would call his own death. Maybe he had this planned. Any of these things are possible because we don't know. But to me, when I heard that, I was immediately like, yeah, somebody took him out. Somebody took him out. Don't know who. There's a lot of people looking for him, right? U.S. wanted him. Authorities in Belize wanted him. He's in a bunch of other countries. He lived in Portland at one point for a little bit. Like Portland, that makes absolute sense. McAfee in Portland, that's perfect. Maybe San Francisco would be another good spot for him. Just a bunch of crazies. He just fits right in. McAfee was arrested in Spain in October after being indicted in the United States for tax evasion months earlier. He allegedly failed to file taxes for 4 years, despite earning millions in income between 2014 and 2018 from promoting cryptocurrencies, consulting work, speaking engagements, and selling the rights to his life story for a documentary, according to court documents. The amount he owed was not specified in the indictment. Now, he's worked himself out of a lot of tight corners before, right? Not necessarily indictments along this line. And why wasn't he paying taxes? What did he have going on? Was he just too far in? Was he too deep in? I don't know. Or was he, was this all trumped up charges? Did they have enough to make it stick on him? Did he know it? And did he say, yeah, I've had a good run. 75 is a good year to make it to. I'm out. I'm done. I don't see that as being a reality for John McAfee, just following him over the years. I mean, he was just always going. I mean, he was nuts, but he was just so nuts in an entertaining way. The Spanish judges approved his extradition to face charges for the 2016, 17, and 2018 tax years. Government always gets you. Death and taxes. Two sure things in life, right? In a virtual hearing in Spanish court earlier this month, McAfee argued that the U.S. tax evasion charges against him were politically motivated. Maybe they were. They certainly could have been. I'm not one to say that they weren't, right? He's not a guy that went around the world influencing friends and, just making a lot of good, solid friends and just being an overall good guy. Did a lot of drugs, had a lot of big parties, ran around with guns, had bodyguards. He's that kind of guy. Big boats. All right, we're going out to sea. Shows up, handling a machine gun. And he's just, he didn't really have a shutoff. He didn't really have limits. McAfee, founder of the antivirus software firm named after him, with which he is no longer affiliated, was indicted in March on separate fraud and money laundering charges. The U.S. Department of Justice alleged that he and a business partner participated in a scheme that earned more than $13 million by falsely promoting cryptocurrencies to unwitting investors. When crypto was super hot, when Bitcoin was just on its roll, you noticed McAfee, and he had a lot of stuff out there on social media. He was like one of the leading voices of promotion for this stuff. And you're like, oh, that's John McAfee. I mean, why wouldn't this crypto just be everything that he's talking about? Because it wasn't, because it was a pump and dump. I mean, let's be honest, that's what it was, right? He was pumping up stuff. He'd sell it. The investors are like, oh, why is the value on this going down? Classic pump and dump. And just, it makes perfect sense for McAfee to be promoting crypto. The final 2 decades of McAfee's life included a somewhat bizarre series of events. 2012, McAfee briefly vanished after fleeing his home in Belize because local police tried to question him on the death of his neighbor. He's denied involvement in the death and claimed he fled because he feared for his life. He spent time in Guatemala, then he moved to Montreal, Canada, where he worked on a documentary about his life. He ran for U.S. president in 2016 as a libertarian and launched a new security product that he called a effing game changer. There's John. He never minced words. He was always kind of just right there. All right, that's the CNN business version. I'm going to jump right into Esquire. This has got some more interesting facts. McAfee's mysterious death in a Spanish prison has renewed interest in his often controversial life. That's a really good one-word summation to describe John McAfee. Controversial. He was controversial, wasn't he? Which included fleeing from a murder investigation in Belize and running for president. If the last time you thought about John McAfee was your last dalliance with that pesky update your antivirus software notification from his company, you're not alone. But it's time to get caught up because McAfee's story has taken a tragic turn that's truly stranger than fiction. That's why I followed him. I followed him with my good friend Gavin Turner. We're like, hey, did you see what McAfee's doing today? I just from the storyline alone, it was, this is entertaining. Today, McAfee's lawyer confirmed that he died at 75 in a Spanish prison, the very same day a Spanish court ruled that he'd been extradited to the United States. McAfee's shocking death has renewed interest in his controversial life. It made him a legend in tech circles and often defied belief. That was the thing. So much of what he said and did, it didn't seem grounded in reality. The stuff when he was on the lam out of Belize, you're like, I hear what you're saying, John, but it's not believable and it doesn't really fit in with reality. There isn't a consistent order to it, but because you're saying it, I'm going to give it like a, 50-50 chance of being true. Just on the off chance that your 50 is there, I'm going to roll the dice with you and just see how this turns out. But let's rewind. British-born McAfee made his name in the late 80s with McAfee Associates, a software company that was once the gold standard of consumer computer security. In 1994, McAfee resigned from the company, which went on to reach its apex without him. Shocking, I know, right? He's not one of those guys that, is the founder and the company's like, he's the namesake, we keep him around. He was a straight up liability. Smart guy, though. The company has since tried to distance itself from McAfee, even go so far as to rename the venture Intel Security because Intel bought it. Following its $7.7 billion purchase in 2010 by computer chip manufacturer Intel. Why did the company want to put McAfee at arm's length, you ask? After selling a stake in the business, McAfee went on a series of short-lived business adventures. This is where it kind of starts to get interesting, including an instant messaging system, a firewall provider, and a ranch providing flights in trikes, which were cabins suspended from hang gliders. All right. The trouble started when he headed south to Belize in 2008 during the Great Recession, beginning of that, where he founded the company Quorum EX. And the E is capitalized, which aimed to produce herbal antibiotics disrupting quorum sensing in bacteria. Something that most of us know so little about that if you told it to us, we would go, okay, all right, I'll invest, all right. In April 2012, on suspicion of a meth lab, the gang suppression unit of Belize's police force raided Quorum EX's research facility, where they had confiscated both McAfee's passport and licensed weapons. They shot his dog and briefly imprisoned him before charges of unlicensed drug manufacturing and unlicensed weapons possessions were dropped. Isn't that interesting? When the police arrived, they found McAfee in bed with a 16-year-old girl. Now, in his defense, I've heard she's 17. But in Belize, I think anything goes, and you just don't worry about that kind of stuff. But it's that kind of stuff that you're like, John, you could have made some better decisions that probably wouldn't have led to this path that you took of some really poor decisions. So that was in when? That was in 2008. So 13 years ago, 75. So he's 62 in bed with a 16 or 17-year-old. Not a good choice. There's nothing good that's going to come from that. Ask, oh man, what rock stars? Jerry Lee Lewis and his 14-year-old cousin. Ask how that went for his career. Not well. Later in 2012, McAfee became the subject of a media frenzy surrounding the death of his neighbor, Gregory Fall. Have you seen the Netflix special about McAfee? If you haven't, you should check that out, because that's where you're like, this guy he's not necessarily crazy. He's nuts. You know the difference there? It's like, this guy is just talking stuff that makes no sense at all. Fall, his neighbor, was irate about McAfee's disruptive lifestyle. That's a nice way of saying it. You have some big parties, you do a lot of drugs, that's disruptive. McAfee's disruptive lifestyle, characterized by a rowdy crowd of underage girls and bodyguards. He complained to the local mayor about McAfee's 9 disruptive dogs. 2 days later, Fowle's housekeeper found him dead of a bullet wound to the head. When local authorities sought McAfee out as a person of interest in their investigation, McAfee went on the run, claiming he would be silenced if he was thrown in jail. McAfee conducted interviews while living as a fugitive until he was apprehended and arrested in Guatemala in December. McAfee sought and was denied political asylum from Guatemala, then faked 2 heart attacks in prison to avoid deportation to Belize. It worked. McAfee was instead deported to Miami. Now, he had high blood pressure, and he had a couple of panic attacks. Those were the heart attacks. That we know now. In the United States, McAfee continued to make headlines. In 2015, McAfee announced his run for president as the candidate for the newly formed Cyber Party. Later that year, he switched his ticket to the Libertarian Party. He ran again for the Libertarians nominated in the 2020 election, but this time he ran in exile following reports that he and his wife and 4 of his campaign staffers were being investigated for tax felonies by the IRS. Guy just had a litany of stuff go sideways on him because of choices he made. In October 2020, McAfee was arrested in Spain at the behest of the United States government. He stood accused of failing to file tax returns for 4 years, despite raking in millions from consulting work, cryptocurrency, speaking engagements, and selling his life rights. He was also accused of concealing assets like yachts and real estate in other people's names. In March, McAfee was indicted on additional charges. And then they said there's a little bit of business about bilking 13 million people by falsely promoting crypto, but that's allegedly. I mean, that could have happened. It might have happened. Let's be honest. It probably did happen. McAfee resisted extradition in the United States, claiming he faced political persecution. Now, he's always saying that people are after him without any solid evidence that people are actually after him. If you watch that documentary, he does like these crazy disguises, and you're like, we can see that it's you. We can tell that it's you. You're not really fooling anybody. Are you just kind of making a mockery here? It was so hard to tell. Like that Joaquin Phoenix movie where he becomes a rap star. And it was just, and that was a hoax. I kind of watched the McAfee Netflix, I think it was a Netflix special, and I was like, is this a hoax? Because some of the stuff he's doing, it seems like a hoax, and this doesn't make any sense. But I mean, it's entertaining, so why wouldn't I watch it? All right, so those are two stories that kind of cover, the guts of it. I want to read just a few more things from the Wikipedia page about John McAfee, because we know that everything in Wikipedia is just 100% true. With McAfee, you don't really know. You just have no idea. The night after McAfee arrived in the United States after being deported from Guatemala in December 2012, he was solicited by Janice Dyson, then a sex worker in South Beach, Miami. The two spent the night together. Despite Dyson being more than 30 years McAfee's junior, McAfee and Dyson subsequently began a relationship and married in 2013. And to be honest, it seems like they had kind of a normal relationship. As wacky as that is, John's the kind of guy who could make that work. It's like, all right, I don't really care about your history. And I think he truly didn't. He was able to kind of get past some of those things. And and some people would say, well, that is horrible judgment to be marrying a prostitute from South Beach. All right, it probably was, but it seemed to work for John. So, Jesus hung out with prostitutes, right? I mean, that's what we're told. So there's some of that stuff in there. McAfee originally took up residence in Portland, Oregon in 2013. Yeah, I remember that. It's like, what is he doing? Well, because keep Portland weird, McAfee kept it weirder, right? In 2012 article on Mensa Bulletin, the magazine of American Mensa, McAfee stated that being the developer of the first commercial anti-computer virus program had made him the most popular hacking target, confiding that hackers see hacking me as a badge of honor. He added that for his own security, he had other people buy his computer equipment for him, use pseudonyms from setting up computers and logging in and changing his IP address several times a day. He had all kinds of stuff like this going on. And you're like, is that really necessary? You've been out of the antivirus software gig for a long time, a long, long time. When asked on another occasion if he personally used McAfee's antivirus software, McAfee replied, I take it off, and that it's too annoying. He literally came out and said, yeah, it's bloatware. Don't use it. Maybe that's because he got his money. Because when he was pitching that crypto, man, did he make it sound like this is the best thing since sliced bread. You should buy it. Well, John McAfee's never wrong. I mean, he's never had any issues except for that whole bullet hole in the neighbor's head taken off and his dog being killed. And here's another fun fact. In 2013, McAfee claimed that the former cocaine baron, Boston George Young, was writing his official biography called No Domain. Do you remember Boston George Young? Does that name sound familiar? The movie Blow with Johnny Depp? Yep, that was Boston George Young. I love that movie. That's a great movie. So sad when his wife dies of cancer, I think, in the beginning of the movie. But I mean, that's another train wreck movie, just kind of like Scarface. You know how it's going to end, but you watch it anyway. And I believe Boston George is still alive. He's old. He'll be pretty old now. But that guy used to move some marijuana, right? I mean, and then cocaine. Whew. In 2015, McAfee resided in Lexington, Tennessee. He's just all over. In December 2018, he claimed in his Twitter feed to have 47 genetic children. 47. That seems aggressive. That seems costly. And the fact that none of them are ever around, really-ish? I don't know. Did he just make that up? Hey, let's see what these morons believe. I think a lot of McAfee was, along those lines. Let's just throw this out there because people will believe anything. I'm already half crazy. They'll probably buy this anyway because we don't have a baseline of normal for him. But I still go back to, I don't really think he didn't seem like a dude that was take himself out. That's kind of where I sit with all this. So I was sad to see that John was dead, in spite of all of his shortcomings and being disruptive and probably not making some great choices in life. But he did provide a certain element of entertainment that you're like, nobody else would do that except John McAfee. So sad to see him go. Rest in peace, John. For better or for worse. I hope they figure out what actually happened, but I don't think he killed himself. I don't think Epstein did either, but probably for different reasons, but still kind of the same. Somebody wanted him dead. That's all I got on this one. Yeah, kind of a sad one. Some people would say, he deserved to be taken out. Yeah, maybe so. But I found his entertainment. I found his life story entertaining. Does that make me a bad person to find it entertaining? Somebody else, has a train wreck of a life. Probably, to the extent of which I followed him, it probably a little bit ridiculous, but sometimes you got to follow ridiculous stories because you feel like your own life is like, I need just a little bit of pickup and pep. I need something to kind of look at. John McAfee, for me, was one of those guys I followed. So there we are. That's it. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Love to have you subscribe if you so see fit. Hit the like button, notification, all that stuff. You know what to do. Thanks again for being here. I'll catch up soon. Till then, stay safe. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.